He told me he was working late again, but his shirt smelled like her perfume. Sweet, cheap, familiar. I didn't ask questions that night. I just watched him sleep beside me, his arm draped over me like nothing was wrong. And I whispered to myself, "You'll regret this." The next morning, I smiled as I made his coffee, added 2 sugars, just how he liked it. He didn't notice my hands weren't shaking anymore. That's the thing about betrayal. Once it breaks you, nothing else can. He thought I didn't know. He thought his little secret with her was safe behind closed doors. But every lie leaves fingerprints, and I had already started collecting them. By the time they realized, it was already too late.
Hi. My name is Clara Winter, and before you judge me for what I did, just know I wasn't always this cold. Once I believed in loyalty, in love, in friendship. But that was before I learned that both can stab you with the same knife. Mia was my best friend. At least, that's what I thought she was. We met in college. She was loud, funny, confident in all the ways I wasn't. I used to envy her ease, the way she walked into a room and made it her stage. I was the quiet one, the listener, the one who stayed behind to clean up the mess after the party ended. When I got married to Ethan, my college sweetheart, Mia was my maid of honor. She gave the most beautiful speech. She cried harder than my own mother. Everyone said, "You're so lucky to have a friend like her." And I believed them. For years, we were inseparable. Double dates, weekend brunches, midnight calls. She was like my second sister. Until one night, everything changed. It started small. Missed calls. Late replies. Little excuses that didn't make sense. Ethan started working late, and Mia started texting less. At first, I thought I was just being paranoid. I wanted to trust them both, the 2 people I loved most. But betrayal has a scent. It's faint at first, like perfume that lingers after someone leaves the room. And once you notice it, you can't unsmell it. I found the first clue on a random Tuesday night. Ethan came home late, smelling like her perfume, the same citrus vanilla scent Mia always wore. When I asked, he brushed it off, said one of his coworkers wore the same thing. I wanted to believe him. God, I really did. Because the alternative was unbearable. The second clue came a week later. Mia's lipstick on a coffee mug in my dishwasher. She hadn't visited in 2 weeks. When I asked Ethan, he said she stopped by while I was at yoga, just to drop something off. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, wondering how much of my life was real. So I did what every woman promises herself she'll never do. I checked his phone. And there it was, a message thread, labeled with her name and a single red heart. The first message I read wasn't even the worst. It was something so casual, so domestic. "Don't forget to bring the wine tonight. I'll light the candles." Like they'd been playing house while I was busy being the fool. I remember my hands shaking, my breath catching, my heart splitting into 1,000 sharp edges. But instead of confronting them, I smiled. I went back to bed, curled up beside him, and whispered goodnight. Because revenge tastes better when it's aged. I spent the next few weeks pretending, laughing with Mia, cooking dinner for Ethan, acting like I hadn't already buried my heart 6 feet under, because I needed time to plan. You see, I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry or beg or throw things. No, I was going to make them pay the same way they made me suffer. Slowly, quietly, from the inside out. And the first step? Making them believe I was clueless. I started inviting Mia over more often. Told her Ethan and I were trying to work on our marriage. She smiled, a little too eagerly, and said she was happy for me. But her eyes? They gave her away. They always do. Ethan started acting strange, guilty, defensive, overcompensating with gifts. He bought me flowers, cooked dinner, even planned a weekend trip. Classic guilt behavior. I let him, because every time he smiled at me, all I could see was her lipstick on his neck. By the time our anniversary came, I had every detail of their affair memorized. The dates, the hotel bills, even the fake work conferences. But instead of confronting them, I gave them both a gift, an invitation, to dinner, at our house.
The night of the dinner, I wore red. Not my usual soft blush or pastel tones, but deep crimson. The color of blood. The color of warning. Ethan loved me in red once. He used to say it made me look dangerous. I guess he was right. I set the table myself. Candles, wine, soft music, the illusion of romance. Every detail chosen to make them comfortable, to make them drop their guard. When Mia arrived, she looked radiant. She'd curled her hair, painted her lips that same familiar shade, the one I'd seen smudged on my husband's coffee mugs. She handed me a bottle of wine, smiled sweetly, and said, "Happy anniversary, Clara. You two are goals." I wanted to laugh. Instead, I hugged her. Tight. Maybe too tight. Ethan came downstairs right after, pretending not to be startled when he saw her. For a second, his eyes darted between us. That flicker of fear was all I needed to confirm everything. Dinner was perfect. Too perfect. Mia laughed too loudly. Ethan poured too much wine, and I smiled like I hadn't already mapped out their destruction. Halfway through dessert, I leaned back and said, "You know what's funny? I had the weirdest dream last night." Ethan glanced at me, uneasy. "In the dream," I continued, "someone betrayed me. Someone I trusted completely." Silence. Even the music seemed to fade. "And do you know what I did?" I asked softly. Mia forced a laugh. "What, Clara? What did you do?" I smiled. I forgave her. I even poured her another glass of wine. They both froze, and for a moment, it felt like the air itself had stopped moving. Ethan cleared his throat, muttered something about getting more from the kitchen, and I watched him leave. Mia followed with her eyes, then turned to me with a shaky laugh. "Clara, you're acting weird." Am I? Or maybe I'm just finally waking up. Her smile faltered. She knew. She didn't have proof, but she knew I knew. That's the thing about guilt. It's louder than confession. For the next few days, I played a new role. The forgiving wife, the clueless friend, the calm before the storm. But underneath, I was studying them. Every lie, every move. Mia was reckless, the kind of person who believed she could manipulate emotions like cards. Ethan, on the other hand, was terrified of confrontation, a perfect mix of arrogance and cowardice. They were easy prey. So I set the stage for Act 2. I started hinting that Ethan and I were having trust issues. Mia, ever the opportunist, offered to help. She suggested couples therapy, dinners, even weekends away. It was almost poetic, watching her build the trap she'd eventually walk into. One afternoon, I told her Ethan and I needed space. I said I'd be going away for a few days to visit my mother. Her eyes lit up, just for a second, before she masked it with fake concern. "Of course, Clara. You do what you need. I'll keep Ethan company." Exactly as I wanted her to. The next evening, I drove out of town, but only far enough to make it believable. Then I parked, doubled back quietly, and waited. By midnight, Ethan's car was gone. So was Mia's. I followed them to the hotel I already knew about, the one with the discreet parking and tinted windows. They thought they were careful, but cheaters never are. I didn't confront them that night. No screaming, no scene. I simply watched. I wanted to remember every detail. The betrayal, the laughter, the lies. So that, when revenge finally came, it would be perfect. When I got home, I opened a new folder on my computer. I called it Restoration Project. Inside, I started collecting everything: texts, photos, videos, receipts. Each file was another nail in the coffin of their little affair. And then I began step 2, breaking them from the inside. Ethan's guilt made him fragile. I began subtly gaslighting him, moving things, planting clues, pretending to forget conversations. He started doubting himself, wondering if he was losing his mind. I'd whisper at night, "You've been so distracted lately. Are you okay?" He'd apologize over and over. Meanwhile, Mia started slipping up. She'd text Ethan from her work phone, forget to delete messages, even accidentally tag him in private posts. I helped her unravel, gently, invisibly, until finally everything they built on lies began to collapse. People think revenge starts with anger, but real revenge starts with silence, with patience, with the kind of calm that only heartbreak can teach you. By the time Ethan started doubting himself, I was already 10 steps ahead. He'd come home exhausted, eyes hollow, muttering apologies for things I never accused him of. I'd look at him sweetly, touch his hand, and say, "It's okay, darling. I trust you." Those words hit him harder than any accusation could, because guilt doesn't survive well in kindness. It festers. Mia, on the other hand, was beginning to crack. She'd always been loud, confident, untouchable. Now she jumped when her phone buzzed. She deleted messages faster than she sent them. She'd even started avoiding me, claiming work stress, long shifts, headaches, but I knew the truth. She was afraid to be seen next to me, afraid that maybe, just maybe, I knew. And I made sure she never stopped wondering. One morning, I sent her a simple text. "Lunch today? There's something I've been meaning to tell you." She replied almost instantly, "Sure, everything okay?" I said yes. But when we met, I talked about nothing. Just random gossip, old college memories. Every time she tried to steer the conversation somewhere else, I smiled and said,
"Oh, it's nothing important. I'll tell you another time." The uncertainty drove her insane. Over the next few weeks, I watched their affair unravel not because of what I did, but because of what they imagined I might do. That's the beauty of psychological revenge. You don't destroy people directly. You let their own fear do it for you. Still, that wasn't enough. I didn't want them just broken. I wanted them exposed. I wanted the world to see what they really were. And so, I crafted my masterpiece. I invited both of them, separately, to a charity event I was organizing.
I told Mia it was a surprise for Ethan. I told Ethan it was a networking event Mia helped me plan. They both agreed, of course. Liars love pretending to be generous. The night of the event, the restaurant was perfectly lit. Soft music, dim lights, a private room. Exactly the kind of place they'd sneak off to behind my back. I hired a photographer, under the pretense of capturing donor photos. What they didn't know was that every photo, every angle, every frame was part of my evidence. When they arrived, they froze. Seeing each other there, confused, awkward, I greeted them like nothing was wrong. "Thank you both for coming," I said, smiling. "It means a lot." We made small talk. I pretended to take a phone call and stepped out, leaving them alone for exactly 3 minutes. Long enough for the photographer to accidentally catch them whispering. Long enough to fuel the next part of my plan. By the next morning, those photos were circulating. Not online, I wasn't that careless, but through private emails sent to Ethan's company board members, anonymous. Subject line, "Integrity matters." Within days, Ethan's boss called him in. Whispers spread. Promotions were paused, reputation quietly stained. And Mia? She started getting anonymous messages too. Copies of texts she thought she'd deleted. Screenshots from Ethan's phone, ones only I could have known existed. Each one signed off with a single phrase: "Borrowed things always get returned." She called me one night, sobbing, "Clara, someone's trying to ruin my life." I remember holding the phone, staring at my reflection in the dark, and saying softly, "Oh, Mia, maybe it's just karma." There was silence on the line, and then she whispered, "You know, don't you?" I didn't answer. I just hung up. The next week, Ethan moved out, not because I asked him to, but because he couldn't look me in the eye anymore. He said he needed space, and I nodded like the loving wife who understood. Let him have his space. He'd need it for what came next.
When Ethan left, he took his guilt with him, and Mia, poor, delusional Mia, thought she'd won. She started posting pictures again, smiling, glowing, as if happiness could erase sin. But even through the filters and fake captions, I could see it. The tremor behind her eyes, the unease she couldn't hide. Because guilt doesn't vanish when you delete the evidence. It lingers. It rots you from the inside out. I knew they were still seeing each other. Of course they were. Affairs built on adrenaline don't just stop. They crash, hard and messy. I didn't need to follow them this time. They were already destroying themselves for me. Ethan lost focus at work. Mia's friends stopped trusting her. Her colleagues whispered behind her back because rumors once released have no owner. And the best part? They both thought the other was responsible. Ethan accused Mia of leaking the photos to ruin his career. Mia blamed Ethan for sharing her messages. They screamed, fought, broke things, and made up. The same cycle I'd endured in silence now played in reverse. All I had to do was nudge them from time to time. A text here, an anonymous note there. A perfectly timed photo delivered to Ethan's inbox with the subject, "She's lying again." Soon, Ethan stopped answering her calls, and Mia, she spiraled. She showed up at my door one evening, eyes red, mascara smudged, shaking. I almost didn't recognize her. The confident, radiant woman I once called my friend was gone. What stood before me was desperation in human form. "Clara, I need to talk to you." I let her in, offered her tea, listened as she poured out her version of the story. How Ethan was losing it, how she felt trapped, how everything was falling apart. She said, "I think someone's doing this to us." I tilted my head. "Us?" I asked softly. "You mean you and my husband?" The silence that followed was delicious. She froze. Her lips parted. No words came out. It was the kind of silence that screams louder than confession. I smiled and leaned forward. "Tell me, Mia, when did you start borrowing things that weren't yours? My clothes, my perfume, my husband?" Tears filled her eyes.
Bert, Clara, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Oh, you meant every second, I said quietly. You just didn't think you'd get caught. I stood, calm and collected. She reached for my hand. I pulled away. "You know what hurts most?" I said. "You didn't just betray me. You watched me trust you, and you enjoyed it." Mia fell apart right there, sobbing, apologizing, begging. But apologies are like broken glass. They only cut deeper when you try to pick them up. When she left, she looked smaller, like the world had finally seen her for what she really was. And Ethan? He called me the next day, said he'd made a mistake, that he missed me, that he wanted to come home. Funny how men always come back when the fun turns into fear. I told him I'd think about it. He didn't know I was already finishing the last step of my plan. See, while they were busy accusing each other, I'd gathered one final piece of evidence, a little digital collection of everything. Photos, messages, hotel bills, screenshots. I'd labeled it borrowed love, and I sent it to Mia's fiancé, to Ethan's company's HR, to every person whose opinion mattered in their little perfect worlds. By the next morning, both of them were ruined. Mia lost her job. Ethan was suspended pending investigation for ethical misconduct. Their reputations? Gone. Their relationship shattered beyond repair. And me? I went to the beach that evening, sat on the cold sand, watching the tide swallow the sunlight. For the first time in months, I felt peace. Not joy, not victory, just peace, the kind that comes after you've burned everything down and realized you're still standing. But as the waves rolled in, I realized something else. Revenge doesn't heal you. It just empties you until there's nothing left to hurt. Still, I'd do it all again, because some borrowed things should never be returned.
The morning after everything fell apart, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Ethan called first, then Mia. Then Ethan again. And again. I didn't answer. Not once. By noon, it was all over the news feeds. Quiet little posts, vague statuses, office gossip. Someone got fired. Someone cheated. The world had moved on, as it always does. But for them, time had stopped. Ethan finally came to see me 3 days later. He looked smaller. Not physically, but in the way a man shrinks when he runs out of lies to stand on. He didn't knock, just stood in the doorway, holding the wedding band I had stopped wearing. "Clara," he said, voice cracked, "I know I don't deserve it, but I need you to understand. She meant nothing." I smiled, not cruelly, not kindly, just a small, tired smile. "Ethan," I said softly, "you should stop saying that. Because when you say she meant nothing, you make my pain sound meaningless too." He stared at me, confused, broken, still looking for the woman he once manipulated with flowers and promises, but she was gone. "She told me you knew. Mia. She said you ruined us." I met his eyes and said, "No, Ethan, you ruined yourselves. I just handed you the mirror." He didn't argue. He just nodded, as if, for once, he understood. Then he left. And that was the last time I ever saw him.
Mia moved away a few weeks later. Word was she tried to start over in another city, another job. But the internet never forgets. Her name carried whispers wherever she went. She sent me one last message before she disappeared. "I hope you're happy now." I didn't reply, because happiness had nothing to do with it. Months passed. The house grew quieter. I started painting again, something I hadn't done in years. It felt strange, learning to live without the noise of betrayal humming in my bones. People asked if I'd start dating again. I said no. Not because I didn't believe in love, but because I'd finally learned what kind of love I deserved. One that didn't require me to lose myself to keep it. Sometimes I still think about Mia, about the girl who used to braid my hair, who cried at my wedding, who swore she'd never hurt me. I wonder if she ever wakes up at night remembering my voice, the one that said, "Borrowed things always get returned." And Ethan? I heard he tried to rebuild his life. A new job, a new girlfriend, a new apology. But guilt has a way of following you like a shadow. And from what I've heard, he's still trying to outrun his. As for me, I've found peace in the strangest place, in the quiet, in the stillness that comes when there's nothing left to plot, nothing left to burn. I learned that revenge isn't about justice. It's about closure. And closure doesn't come when they apologize. It comes when you stop waiting for it. So now, when people ask about Ethan or Mia, I just smile and say, "Oh, them? They were just a lesson. A lesson in trust. A lesson in silence. A lesson that borrowed things always break before they're returned."